Okay, hi folks. Welcome to our Muslim Futures author chat series where we're going to be talking with all the writers and filmmakers whose stories make up the upcoming Muslim Futures anthology, which is coming soon to a bookstore near you. Um, so each of these stories, each of these episodes is a chance to chat with one of our wonderful authors from the anthology on everything from speculative fiction and magical realism to spirituality and what it takes to envision an aspirational future, especially now as we're living through a very dystopian present. So today I'm super excited to be chatting with Nijla Mu'min, author of The Wedding. Welcome, Nijla.
Thank you. Happy
I'm
to be
super
here.
excited to be chatting with you about your story, which is so beautiful. And I thought maybe we could just begin with a little bit of an overview. I know I just said it, but could you tell us what your story is called and what it's about?
So my story is called The Wedding, and it is a family story about an older man named Hassan who is about to get married. And his daughter, Rakaya, narrates this journey in which her father has found love again in older age. He's in his 70s. And at the same time, she's about to have a child, and she's in her early 40s. So this story looks at the way time is not a limitation for the possibilities of love and starting over in our lives. And it is based loosely on my own family, my own father, my own mother, and myself. And it's something that's just very special to me.
I love that. You jumped a little bit to one thing I wanted to ask you too, because I know from having conversations with you about this project over a long time that there is a lot of your own family's story and inspiration and influences that you sort of pulled into this story. And so, you know, that is one piece of it that always like struck me and really rings very true is that like the representations, the way you drew the characters of all of the characters in the film, it feels like really lived in, it feels really authentic, and it feels like it's drawn from your own personal experience, which is one thing that I really love about it. It's like the tenderness between the characters. um, I also am really struck by like the world that you built around this story because at its heart, it is so intimate and personal and a story of two couples and their love for each other as they're going through very different experiences. Um, but I'm also really curious to hear you talk a little bit about like when you were thinking about the aspirational world that you're building around these characters, and the future that you're building around these characters, like what are some of the details of that aspirational world that you were trying to create, and why was that particular world really important for you to build out around this story?
Yeah, the aspirational world for me was a lot around time and age. And I
Mm,
think a lot of times in our current world, especially in American society, we look at our age and time as a limitation rather than something that can be expansive and really be full of possibility. So I wanted to specifically look at reproductive health, especially for Black women and African American women who have some of the highest mortality rates in our country currently, and what it would look like for the medical system and for health centers to be able to center them and really, prop them up and make sure that they're able to be heard and seen. And this was something that was very important to me as someone who still, wants to become a mother and is, now 40 years old. So it came from a very personal space. And I like to look into that possibility that there's still time. And then also for my father, who's now in his late 70s, he's always talking about, wanting to get married again. And, like he's a lover like me. So I just think that's really beautiful. And I wanted to create a story where he gets that. He gets that wedding. He gets to fall in love again and have the story that he wants. So it's aspirational because we're not limited to what current society tells us we should be doing, or oh, it's, throw it away, it's too late. No, there's always time. So that's what I really
Mm.
meant to paint with this story.
I love that. I love that, and it's so the story is so grounded in a way that feels really accessible. It feels really available in a way that, like, you think about futurism and like creating like an aspirational world of the future. And there's like some folks will have the tendency to try and go like really, really wild and like systemic and like far flung futures and crazy stuff. But one of the things I love so much about your story is like sometimes an aspirational future is just like showing the way that we relate to each other in different ways and showing the way that we can choose to value things that aren't currently valued like on a societal or systemic level. And so like the Center for Black Maternal Health is like in your story is such a great example of that, right? It's like it feels really like I think when we talk about futurism, like every conversation that I have with any one of you guys about futurism, like we always start with a conversation about futurism and it ends in a conversation around like nowism, which is
Right,
like, oh yeah, like we can choose to do these things. Like we just don't value these things, right?
right, right.
Um, and that example from your story, I think is such a great example of like how accessible like some of these aspirational worlds could be and how um like possible some of these aspirational worlds are if we just choose to value them. So I love
Right.
that about your story.
Thank you so much. That Center for Black Maternal Health, like, I was like, wow, what if we had this today? All of these medical centers that specifically cater to decreasing this Black maternal health crisis and really aid, Black birthing people who are at different ages with their reproductive journey. Like, what would that look like? And I know there are organizations right now who are trying to make that happen. And
Mm,
so I feel like this story is really aiding and, getting to that type of, present and future.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Um, So I'm curious, I would like to wind it back a little bit and I'd love to hear you talk a little about just like what is it about this project that made you kind of want to collaborate on this anthology? I mean, and what is it just about this idea of envisioning like Muslim futures specifically, like a future where Muslims are able to thrive, and are not defined by their trauma and, are all the things that we talked about in our world building process of like embedded the stories embedded with like belonging and abundance in a way that we don't often
Right.
see ourselves represented. Like, I'm curious to hear, in your words, like, what is it that made you want to collaborate on this project? And what is it about the idea of a Muslim future that feels important to you?
I think for me, I'm always invested in like going outside of that stigma and the stereotypes that are attached to Muslims. Because when
Mm,
I was growing up in a Muslim community in the Bay Area, I didn't see that. I only saw human beings who were thriving and singing and just listening to the Beatles, and like it was just like a very diverse community of people who all had such a distinct way of life within the Muslim world. So when I made my first feature film, Jin, that was what I was envisioning a world in which we are so much more, than what is prescribed to us. And
mm,
so when this opportunity came to write this story and be a part of this anthology series, I was just so excited because it continues the work that I do to always reimagine Muslim life, and show people and show myself the humanity and the love that is at the core, because that was like
mm,
what I was born into. So for me, it's like a life mission and something that is very important to me. And it's all I know. Like I only know this world where there is aspiration, where there is possibility, where there is open-mindedness, because that was the world that I was born to into. So I wanna
mm,
just continue that tradition.
mm.
Yeah.
I love that. So in that context, then, how are you hoping that readers are going to engage with your story? What is it that you feel like you're hoping that readers are going to most take away from the story that you've created, the characters that you've created, the world that you've built? What are some of the things you want readers to take away from that?
I want people to have hope. I think hope is so important right now in our current world. We ingest so much harm and violence and really negative imagery. To have hope, to read something that makes you feel good and makes you want to keep living and thriving is
Mhm.
very important to our emotional health. So I
Mm,
know it might sound simple, but hope and possibility are things that keep our human spirits going. And I want my story to give that to readers, that we are going to keep going, you know,
mhm,
no matter what.
mm.
So,
That resonates really deeply, especially with me, hearing you say that, especially like now in the year 2025, almost 2026. As we've been living through, I keep, thinking like, as we've been living through the last year, but then also like the last couple of years. And then also like, well, actually, like the last 5 years have been really difficult.
the
It's like,
pandemic, the
but then
fires. Oh, yeah.
it's just crazy, right? And so, within the context of that and everything that has been kind of compounding on itself, and I think about these stories that we wrote, 2, in some cases 3 years ago, um, but now re-engaging with them and engaging a readership with them now in the year, again, 2025, going to be 2026 by the time this book reaches its audience. Um, why you kind of alluded to this earlier just now in terms of speaking about how important it is to have hope and how that was such a critical theme at the center of your story. But, again, thinking about this now, particularly within the year 2025, 2026, why are you thinking it's especially important that aspirational futures about Muslims, where we have all the conditions to thrive, are important or necessary to our experience?
Yeah, I think specifically in this time, there's this feeling of feeling like hopeless or trapped.
Mm,
Like, how are we gonna get through these next 3, 4 years? How what's gonna come next? Like, when is it gonna be over? I think there's this anxiety and this per this pervasive feeling. So I think having these stories that show there is another way, right? There is another way if we lean into community, if we lean
mm,
into the people around us who care about us, the organizations, the activists, our families. There's another way, right? Aside from the headlines or, these videos that are coming out. And so I really feel like that's why these stories are so important right now, 'cause it challenges us to think beyond, what we are constantly seeing and really come from a space of, like, internal, hope and, like, forward movement. And not even just in, like, a grand way or a big way, but it's like, what can we do just in our daily lives, and that's what my short story really looks like in our daily lives that, evoke love and care for other
mm,
people. And so that I think is really important right now, like daily, daily actions that we can.
mm. I love that. This conversation has given me some hope.
Oh, that
Some
feels good.
much
It gives
needed
me
hope.
hope too because I had a rough day yesterday.
It's like, it's really true, right? It's like just thinking about like what are the things that we can be doing in this current moment to, be able to, even on some small scale, kind of like lean into community, sort of like build on a micro scale a little bit of the world that we want to see. Where do we have agency to kind of do that, like within our sort of like family or community, whatever that is. And
Yes.
so, I couldn't agree more. I feel like your story is like such a great example of that. And um just like the tenderness and the sweetness of it is something that I find real inspiring. And so I'm grateful for everything that you put into it. You put so much heart and soul into the story. I'm so glad that it's like a part of the anthology. I'm so glad that people are going to get to read this story very soon. Um, I'm just
Cute.
really excited.
I just
I'm
looked
really
at it before I got on because I looked at the comic and I was like, "Oh my god, this is
nice.
so beautiful." Like, it's like a movie.
It is, it's very
All these
cinematic.
stories, like, they all need to be movies.
Totally. I know, right? Like, I need, like, the visualization of this, like, multiverse of aspirational futures as much as possible. Like, I need that multiverse of possibilities because things are things are a little dark right now. But, like we were saying, like, we have the agency and opportunity to make them brighter in some small way and proliferate that as much as possible.
Definitely.
So thank you, Nigella, for taking the time just to chat with me about your story. It was so nice to be able to kind of like delve back into your story world and talk more about some of the experiences and influences that brought you to this place. And thanks everyone for watching. Thank you so much for just, engaging with these stories. And we hope that you will click the link below or in the comments and pre order a copy of the book. Muslim Futures, the prose anthology, and also the graphic novel anthology. And we hope you enjoy it. So we'll see you in the future. Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you.